This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 2nd of May, 2023, to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by His Honor the Speaker, messages from Her Excellency the President, petitions, papers.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm commanded to lay the annual report and audited financial statements of the Barbados Tourism Authority for the 17th month period ended 31st of August 2014, as well as the annual reports and audited financial statements of the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. for the years 2015 to 2020.
Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Mr. Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the audited statement of accounts of the Board of Management of the Lodge School for the year ended March 2021.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable Leader of Government
Mr.
Business.
Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Barbados Optional Savings Bonds offered to the public, Amendment Bill 2023.
Second, please.
Questions that the aforementioned bill be read the first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, or replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Questions that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 12, in the name of the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the Barbados Optional Savings Bonds offered to the public, Amendment Bill 2023.
Honourable for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise this morning to lead this discussion for what ordinarily, sir, would be a routine matter. And in many ways, it is, but it isn't. And the truth is, sir, that all our efforts, sir, since coming to office has been geared to restoring, sir, credibility with respect to the management of the public finances of this country, sir. And in spite of all the challenges that we face, sir, I know that the people of Barbados understand that this government has been on the front foot, sir, with respect to our response, not just to restoring that credibility, but in the midst, sir, of the most extraordinary challenges which COVID-19, sir, presented to this country, that the discussions around the management of our public finances, sir, and the management of our public debt, sir, this Barbados Labour Party, sir, we have been consistent, sir, consistent with respect to not just transparency, but equally, sir, with respect to bringing a measure of credibility back to the management of the public finances. I dare say, sir, that throughout all of that, Barbadians have not been subjected, sir, to tax increases that they became accustomed to, sir, under the last Democratic Labour Party administration. And this government, responding to those myriad of challenges, sir, confronting us in the last few years, we have maintained, sir, the tax posture with respect to corporate taxes, with respect to personal income taxes, sir, to ensure that we maintain, sir, and improve, if not, sir, the delivery of public services so that all Barbadians, sir, would understand that whilst the world is going through what it is going through, that we remain committed, sir, to improving the delivery of public services to Barbadians, which, sir, had gone unwanted and deteriorated to such a degree, sir, that everybody wanted to run from Barbados, sir. Nobody wanted to lend Barbados any money, sir, because the government of the day simply was not capable, sir, of managing the public finances. Now, sir, we went through a very comprehensive debt restructuring, both on the domestic as well as on the external side, sir. And in the original framework, sir, we included the natural disaster clauses, sir, with respect to our debt. Now, you would recall, sir, last September, we came here and we executed what was the debt for nature swap, sir, which, in collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank, as well as the Nature Conservancy, sir, we were able to issue then, sir, what was termed the Blue Loan, which set in motion, sir, a series of commitments that Barbados said that we would undertake to ensure that we protect the marine resources, sir. But within that structure and that framework, the commitments that we gave then, sir, that specific instrument included the natural disaster clauses, sir, but equally, sir, because we had gone through the pandemic, it included the pandemic clause, which, in layman language, sir, when you're struck with an extraordinary event, sir, an extraordinary event like a hurricane or earthquake, or, well, as was the case, sir, a pandemic, that causes, sir, your condition from a financial perspective to be challenged. The nature of these clauses, sir, to be included in our debt, on the one hand, is to give a measure of certainty, sir, to the persons who are holding that debt up front, that should this thing happen, that these will be the order of events, sir, that will take place, that gives you, sir, the person that is purchasing the debt issued by the government of Barbados, the assurance, sir, that in the time period of recovery, that we would ordinarily use those resources, sir, that are critically important for restoring stability, rather than you having to worry, sir, about whether or not you can get back your money. And the whole purpose of these clauses, sir, is to preserve order to the process. Because if something happens to a country, sir, and at the very time that the country needs resources quickly, to be able to respond to the needs of ordinary Barbadians, sir, then you would expect your government to be able to provide those resources. And therefore, whilst I accept, sir, that members of the Democratic Labour Party don't understand that responsibility, sir, or the concept, sir, of looking after the needs of ordinary Barbadians, given their strong record of underperformance, sir, I can understand it. And therefore, when the members of the public are hearing these things in the public, we must remain focused, sir. Now, I want to be clear, sir, here this morning in relation to a few things. Because none of us, sir, none of us, not one of us, sir, want to experience a hurricane, an earthquake of the magnitude, sir, that causes us to have to trigger these clauses. Because the government of Barbados has embarked on a specific course of action to be able to build resilience, sir. And how that resilience is financed, sir, is going to be critically important to determine that whenever we have a significant event, how quickly we will be able to recover. And the stark reality is, sir, that whilst we've seen in the last 5 years, sir, an acceptance, if you like, within the international community for the good reason why these clauses should exist. The truth is, sir, we don't really want the Category 5 hurricanes around Barbados, sir. We don't want any significant earthquakes, sir, or the like, sir. Or we certainly don't want to go back through another pandemic, sir, to have access to money to resolve the matters that we are talking about in this way. But it is here as a stopgap, sir, should the event take place, that everybody knows what will happen. And the truth is, sir, we have committed ourselves to managing the public finances in such a way, which is why elements like the debt swap, sir, which will see $50 million US over the course of 15 years, sir, diverted into the marine spatial planning works, which is being done through the efforts of the Barbados Environmental Sustainability Fund, sir, in order to help build out some of that resilience that we refer to as part of how a government, sir, already constrained by the debt inherited by the last government, sir, which I've said to you before, sir, but I will repeat it again just in the event, sir, that those on the outside through you, sir, have forgotten, sir, have forgotten that the debt we inherited, sir, was over $18 billion. $18 billion, sir. And we restructured it, sir, to put it on a much more sustainable path, given that it was choking us, sir. The service of that debt was choking this country, sir. The debt built up, sir, by the Democratic Labour Party. And a strong, sir, association with the deterioration, sir, of the delivery of public services. And I can repeat it, sir, just in case they've forgotten, sir. Not a garbage truck, sir. Not a garbage truck. The roads in this country, sir, were in deplorable state, sir. The buses were catching a fire, sir, presenting public safety issues and concerns to ordinary citizens who simply want to get work and get school, sir. The maintenance of our facilities, sir, in shambles, right across from polyclinics to schools, sir, you name it, it was in shambles, sir. So any sensible person, sir, with that record, sir, and juxtaposition that against the record of the Barbados Labour Party, sir, who over the last 5 years, sir, we fixed the sewage, sir, that was running in the street for 3 years, sir. We fixing roads and we continue to fix roads, sir, right across the length and breadth of Barbados, sir, to the point where the truth is, sir, some roads taking a little too long to finish, but that's a different discussion. But the point is the roads getting fixed. And there is no reasonable citizen, sir, given the circumstances faced by this government, having to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic in the way that we did, sir, could reasonably contemplate or say that there are credible concerns, sir, with respect to either debt service or quality of the management of the public finances, sir, to even suggest, sir, that there's anything close to incompetence, sir, because that was what was said, incompetence. When it comes to this government, I reject that completely, sir. And I want to say to the citizens of this country, do not allow people to fool you. There's a thing out there called fake news these days. But when you drive down the road these days, when you look around Barbados these days, you got to see for yourself, sir. Now, we are not saying that everything is done, and we've said so from the beginning. But we've made significant progress since coming to office 5 years ago, sir, and in a couple of weeks, it'll be official. But we have made significant progress in this country, sir, properly financed by this government. And it is because, sir, this government was able to arrest, and I use that term deliberately, sir, arrest, sir, the ills that were facing this country when we came to office. Arrest, sir, such that Barbadians in this country can feel a measure of pride, sir, that if you leave here and you go any part of the Caribbean or you go any part of the world, sir, people now feel a sense of pride that Barbados is on its way back, sir. So when the Democratic Labour Party talking, sir, when they're talking, let them understand that no time in the 10 years that they had the stewardship of this country was anybody asking them anything to come and talk about anything, to come and contribute to anything, sir, because what did they see happening in Barbados, sir? Downgrade after downgrade after downgrade after downgrade, sir. So the Democratic Labour Party cannot come to the public of this country with any credibility, or representatives of the Democratic Labour Party masquerading as economists, sir, coming to the country to try to bring smoke and mirrors, sir, with respect to the management of the public debt of this country. Now, let me make it clear again, sir. We inherited $18 billion in debt. We restructured the debt, sir, and $18 billion represented 176% of GDP at the time, sir. Just before COVID hit, sir, March of 2020, sir, we reduced that debt to 119% of GDP. $12.5 billion approximately, sir. Now, obviously, sir, when your economy, I mean, it's as if people like they're forgetting. When the airplanes start flying, sir, when the airplanes start flying, sir, we all saw what happened in Barbados. The economy stalled, sir. Not because of anything that the Barbados Labour Party did, sir, but because we were protecting the lives of ordinary Barbadians in this country, sir. And the economy declined by 15% because, sir, all the hotels were closed, sir. All the taxi men, sir, that were accustomed to going to the airport or the port or wherever else to get a little job when the day comes, sir, the taxis are sitting down, sir. The government's revenue, sir, as a result of that, because remember, I tell you this already, sir, but I can remind the Democratic Labour Party and the country again, sir. There was no time in their stewardship, sir, that the economy lost $2 billion in economic activity. There was no time during their stewardship, sir, that the revenue fell by $600 million, sir, but did Barbados fall apart, sir? No. This Barbados Labour Party, sir, we rose to the challenge, sir. And because of our record of reform and credibility, sir, we were able to get additional resources, sir, additional resources from the international community to support the agenda that we were pursuing and to respond, sir, to the economic fallout, which was completely severe in its impact, sir, in ordinary households and across every community in this country, sir. All of us in here, everybody outside, sir, had to help somebody, know somebody that lost the job, sir. And the Democratic Labour Party, they had to deal with that and so. And you know, it was a common refrain when we were campaigning, sir. You remember last year when we were campaigning, everybody was saying to us that if the Dems was in charge of this country, that we would be dead. Everywhere we went in this country, people told us, all 30 of us in here, that, sir. All 30 of us, they told us that in every community in this country. And therefore, the Democratic Labour Party, sir, no, sir, I can't advise them what to do. I will never advise them what to do. But I will respectfully, sir, tell them, just check yourself. Because the record, sir, of this government, when it comes to the management of this economy, sir, is without comparison, sir. The challenges that we face and the challenges that we continue to face, sir, that we continue to face, We face them and we don't complain about it and don't do anything, sir. We go and we advocate and we get results in order to make sure that ordinary Barbadians in this country, sir, can be shielded as far as possible, sir. Now, this discussion this morning, sir, and I call it a discussion because at the end of the day, sir, I know my constituents in Kingston and Wharton and Regency Park and these, and yours, sir, in Waterhall land, and the others can see and feel the difference that the policies of the Barbados Labour Party made to their lives, not just in COVID, but over the last 5 years. And whilst we take, as the Prime Minister said last year in a conference, we take fresh guard, the reality is, sir, that, you know, they got some people that always like to try to swipe in. Hoping, sir, that something stick. But if you do not take responsibility for what you have done, sir, to this country, you can't come to the people, sir, expecting people to hear you. But I'm responding in this way this morning because it cannot be said, sir, cannot be said that this government is sleeping on the job. It cannot be said, sir, that this government isn't listening and responding, because all last year, sir, when the war started, we said from the beginning we will make adjustments, and whatever adjustments that we can make, sir, to accommodate, to make people's lives a little easier, sir. And regrettably, sir, things have continued to escalate, and we've tried, sir, as far as we could to make sure that people can live in this country. There was no time under the Democratic Labour Party, sir, that they gave anybody in this country, sir, an ease in 10 years. But this Barbados Labour Party, sir, in challenges, circumstances, well, let me get to that yet. In challenges, circumstances, sir, we have sought each and every time, sir, to try to respond to the needs of people. And the Democratic Labour Party, sir, don't understand that. They don't understand that. But, sir, there's been some discussion recently, sir, about interest rates. So forgive me, sir, because it's going to come back to this whole idea of the clauses and what we are doing as part of the Bridgetown Initiative. The reality is, sir, that, and it's an interesting tale to be told, sir, because you must understand context in which you're operating, sir. Context is important. And so when people are out there saying, oh, the government, like, they may know what to do, and the like, sir, now here's the thing, sir. When the economy declined by 15%, sir, hotels ain't got a boy sleeping in them when the night comes, sir. Workers don't know how they're going to feed the family, sir, because they're not income, sir, they're not tips, they're not service charge coming, sir. This government put together a response packages for those hoteliers. You remember we call it the BEST program, sir. And the Honourable Member for St. James Central will be well familiar with the implementation of that BEST program, sir. But we put that program in place as far as possible, sir, using taxpayers' dollars, sir. Taxpayers' dollars, sir, to help families in this country in an extraordinary circumstance. But where do you think we get the money from, sir, to do it? When I tell you that the revenue dropped by $600 million, sir. Where do you think the money come from? It came from the international community based on the reforms and the performance that we were already executing, sir. So when COVID hit, sir, we got the resources. Now, we have made, during the annual meetings in Washington a few weeks ago, sir, we said, look, and sorry, before I get there, sir, forgive me, before I get there, even in the midst of COVID, as we were accessing those resources, sir, this Barbados government, through the Ministry of Finance, myself, the Prime Minister, sir, we have been advocating from the get-go that any loans, sir, that were accessed for COVID, that they should have a long tenor, sir, a long tenor. But in the midst and the heat of trying to get resources, sir, the traditional instruments were available 20 years. 20 years. But we said this thing is a global pandemic. And you cannot have a situation where the very thing that is supposed to help you now, when you come out the back end of it, it is not supposed to now create a problem for you. This is something that we have been advocating from the very beginning in the international community. So let me be clear. We have seen some recognition of that, and there's some work afoot to be able to address that, because we knew, Barbados, the world knew that given what had happened, it was going to cause an extraordinary impact on countries' ability to service its debt. Not Barbados, because we had already restructured our debt, sir. So the issue here is not Barbados, but you're talking about a system globally, sir, that if we are to ensure that our citizens, sir, yours in Waterland and mine in Wharton, sir, that resources that everybody works so hard for, sir, to ensure that we can continue to improve the educational prospects of our children, sir, continue to improve and provide better health care outcomes and services to our citizens, sir, engaging across the youth and sporting opportunities to support, which we have already started to do, sir, but that we need to ramp up and to respond and ensure that our young people will understand that there's an alternative, sir, to the paths that they're seeing, that they saw under the Democratic Labour Party, because they never made any meaningful intervention, sir, for young people in this country. So when I see people talking about you need more opportunities for young people, sir, at Democratic Labour Party branch meetings, the little hair that I got from my head, sir, to stand up. Because I cannot imagine any self-respecting person could even contemplate saying that this government, who every policy that we've implemented, sir, we've said, who is it going to impact? And we try to make sure, sir, that we get opportunities for young people right across the board. From the beginning. And I think, had it not been for COVID, sir, we'd be having a different conversation today. But people are behaving as if somehow COVID didn't happen. But let me just say that this is the government, sir, for the record, and I know this is already enhanced, sir, but this is the government, sir, that ensured that we continue to pay for tuition fees for tertiary at the University of West Indies, sir, which the Democratic Labour Party, sir, when they're talking about giving opportunities for young people, need to understand that right now, sir, right now as we speak, and I made this point earlier in one of the previous debates, but I'll repeat it, sir. The enrollment at the University of West Indies, Cayfield, today is about 75% of what it was, sir, 10 years ago. And I told you at that point, sir, that cumulatively it's about 20,000 young people who did not have an opportunity to go to the University of West Indies as a result of the policy introduced by the Democratic Labour Party. So when they're talking about giving young people the opportunity, they need to understand and take responsibility, sir, for their actions. Because the future of this country relies on young people, sir. So therefore, the management of your debt and where you spend your money on, sir, if you're not investing in young people, sir, to carry the weight forward, sir, then you ain't got the capacity to do anything, sir. So the Democratic Labour Party has no basis, sir, to challenge this Barbados Labour Party on anything to do with young people, anything to do with the management of public services in this country, anything to do with the management of debt, or anything, sir, given our record with respect to addressing a myriad of challenges, sir. And the truth is, within the last 3 years, sir, COVID, nobody saw coming. But you know what? We roll up our sleeves, as the Prime Minister would say, and we got to work, sir. All of us in here got to work to make sure that we could shield Barbadians as far as possible, sir, from the worst that could come and befall any of us in this country, sir. And therefore, I challenge the reasonable people out there, do not allow this narrative that is seemingly wanting to develop in the public space. Don't give it any thought. We all know common sense. We all know sense when we hear it. And we know ignorance too. And therefore, let us label it for what it is, sir. It is foolishness. Foolishness might not be parliamentary, sir, but it is foolishness. Because this thing betrays any semblance of the investment, sir, that they keep talking about Mr. Barr, sir. The investment that Mr. Barr made in providing education is to be able to give us an opportunity, sir, to get to improve ourselves. And the Democratic Labour Party, sir, is a disincentive, sir, to the development of this country. And I challenge anybody to refute me on that, sir. And therefore, whilst I can't tell anybody, sir, who to vote for in the future, I know that this record of this Barbados Labour Party, juxtaposition against anything that the Democratic Labour Party has done in the previous 10 years, sir, I know that my people know better. And therefore, I come here this morning not to take any prisoners, sir. We have to set the record straight. Because these people, in the age of AI, in the age of fake news, in the age of just throwing things against a wall and see what could possibly stick, sir, we need to make sure that we continue to communicate with our people. There are challenges that this country will face, sir, and will continue to face, unless we are able to rise to those challenges, execute the reforms that need to be executed, sir, without fear. Because to keep things the way they are, sir, will be to continue to shackle ourselves, sir, by our feet on our hands and our necks even, will be to shackle ourselves and not give rise to the opportunities that we know that Barbadians can excel in. And therefore, this government, I know, is committed to being able to drive that through. So therefore, the advocacy, sir, advocacy that the Honourable Prime Minister, the Ministry of Finance, through myself and others, sir, as we go to these meetings, sir, and I want to, the context is important, because we knew that the current terms and the instruments that were available at the time, sir, were not necessarily appropriate for the long-term development of the country. But what you can tell the people, sir, oh, we're waiting for the new terms and instruments to come on board before we devise a program that could be financed to help people put food on the table, sir, in the middle of COVID. You think our citizens want to hear that we having a philosophical discussion about what the World Bank and the IMF and the IDB and all these types of people are going to do? No, sir. We are people of practical affairs. People of practical affairs. And therefore, we said, look, we will engage, we will get these loans, but there must be a commitment, sir, to reforming these things, because if we are going to ensure that the countries, not just Barbados, but the countries, sir, because whether you like it or not, sir, this is being faced in the region as well. And if Barbados is to continue to be strong, sir, we don't just need Barbados to be strong, sir. The region got to be strong. And therefore, this is something that we've been advocating for with respect to extending the tenor of the loans, but equally, sir, in making sure that the very thing, sir, the COVID debt, does not now turn around and come to choke us. That's been our discussion from the beginning. So when the war started last year, sir, and the truth is, sir, things that happen, because there's always a war happening in some part of the world, so you know, there's always a war somewhere. And the response of the West to this particular war, sir, is extraordinary. Because all of a sudden, sir, you get sanctioned, I get sanctioned, remember St. Thomas gets sanctioned, all of a sudden people get sanctioned, things get taken up. Then causing, sir, a ripple effect on the rest of us who ain't nothing to do with me, you know, sir? Ain't nothing to do with it at all, nothing to do with Barbados, anything at all. But you know what, sir? Oil prices start to creep up. And you know, not even creep up, sir, they run up quickly. Then, because of that political decision, sir, the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States, sir, increasing interest rates at 75 basis points, sir, a pop. Now, observing this, sir, we obviously know, and as you know, sir, the loan contracts are laid in this parliament. We know what we have signed. But the issue is not in what you have signed, sir, is in the conversation around the fact, sir, that if you are receiving relief for COVID, sir, then that should not be linked in any way to the variability in the short-term dynamics of the market, sir. And we raise these issues continually, sir, up until the last iteration, sir, of the IMF World Bank meetings in April, sir. In April. Because clearly, the very thing that was intended to give you relief, sir, cannot now be the very thing that is causing pain globally. And let's be clear, when the Prime Minister spoke at the Rockefeller Institute, sir, because there was some reference to the Prime Minister going around the world with a begging bowl. You can imagine that, sir? That some person who says they are Bajan, and because they're living up north, sir, talking about the Prime Minister going around the world with a begging bowl. You can imagine that, sir? But even if she was going around the world with a begging bowl, sir, let me tell you something. Prior to getting elected in this country, I thought I understood, sir, based on what I had seen in the previous iteration, and it was clear to me that the previous Prime Minister did not understand the office, what the office of being the Prime Minister of Barbados means, sir. Because under Mr. Arthur, sir, I thought Barbadians and everybody understood that when you're the Prime Minister of Barbados, that actually means something globally. That actually means something globally. So whoever sits in the office of the Prime Minister, sir, got to understand that you're not just the Prime Minister for 166 square miles, sir. There's a global stature that is expected, sir, of the office. And I've watched the Prime Minister, sir, navigate some interesting dynamics, sir. And the Prime Minister has used that understanding of the office so skillfully that when some Bajan can say that the Prime Minister is going around the world with a begging bowl, sir, I felt shame. I felt shame. Because it's clear, again, sir, speaking from George Street, that they don't understand, they continue not to understand what leadership means in this country, sir. Because the Prime Minister, in making the point about the interest rates for Barbados, and yes, the interest rates have gone up, sir, and we continue to advocate that there should be a ban in there to shield for the COVID-specific related debt, sir. So there are 52 countries right now, sir, globally, sir, who are on the brink almost of the Prime Minister actually refers to it as debt row. You know Skid Row, sir? The reference is to Skid Row. Debt row is a similar concept where, based on where things are heading, if we don't address at a global level some of the inequities which, as part of the Bridgetown Initiative, sir, again, Bridgetown Initiative, you ain't calling it the Bridgetown Initiative because of happenstance, sir. It's because the Prime Minister brought together a number of influential leaders last crop over, sir. I remember it was there, sir, last crop over, to craft this thing called the Bridgetown Initiative, which has sparked the imagination, sir, of everybody globally, sir. I ain't went nowhere unless somebody asks me, sir, what is this thing called the Bridgetown Initiative, sir? Ask the Democratic Labour Party. The only thing that people is asking about Barbados when they were in office, sir, is what is happening to Barbados. The taxi men, sir, wherever you go in the Caribbean, people want to know what happened, what going on, sorry, sir, what going on in Barbados. And it wasn't asked with curiosity, it was asked with a sense of disgust, sir, at the management of the affairs under the last Democratic Labour Party administration, sir. So I get it, sir. I get it. They don't understand what leadership means when you're the Prime Minister of Barbados. But they so aspire to be this, there's a fixation of it for the office, but they don't understand what is required when you're actually in the office and how to use the office to improve the lives of ordinary Barbadians. But I know that Bajans get it, sir. I know Bajans get it. Barbadians have experienced, sir, the lack of understanding of the office. Bajans have also seen that people get locked up when they don't understand the office, sir. You understand? And therefore, this is at the heart, sir, because all of a sudden now people nervous. They're nervous. They're nervous, sir, but that's a different debate for a different time. A different debate for a different time. You got to understand, sir, that the things that are facing the world today, these aren't academic discussions. These aren't philosophical discussions in the way that they will want to portray it, sir. these things actually impact the lives of Barbadians. So when we access these resources, sir, we put those resources into financing, sir, not just the build-up of Harrison Point, but the operation of Harrison Point and all of the centers that we stood up, sir, because of COVID-19, sir. You remember when Black Mongolop and Foundation and all these other places, sir, that when people were ill, they were taken to, sir, help to finance that, sir. The monies that we use, sir, help to finance those small businesses and the vendors and everybody, sir, that got a little piece of change during the pandemic, sir. You remember, sir, when we put in place the benefit, the business interruption benefit for the self-employed people, sir. It was a new benefit, sir. Help to finance those things, sir. Help to finance that big set of unemployment, because I remember I tell you, sir, the NAS ran out of money in the unemployment fund, so they had to borrow from the actual fund itself, the unemployment fund. The unemployment fund, which is managed by the NAS, sir, it ran out of money. It ran out of money because 30,000 people suddenly just in one go, sir, suddenly going to the unemployment fund. Early April 2020, sir. So it ran out of money. So it had to borrow from the other funds, and the government had to top them up. Where do you think the money come from, sir? Where do you think the money come from? When you lost $600 million in revenue, sir, in that said year, where do you think the money come from? And we increased expenditure, sir. Now, I know that Bajans get it, because when they say that if the Democratic Party was in charge, that we'll all be dead, sir, they understand. Because they know they can handle, sir, the scale of what was required to respond to Barbadians when they needed it. So, Mr. Speaker, this debate for me hits home, because the rubber that's hit the road, sir, with respect to how a government can respond when disaster strikes. And this natural disaster clause and pandemic clause, sir, I hope, sir, that no Minister of Finance ever has to trigger this clause, because we have not suffered something as catastrophic as anything. But it is there, sir, to ensure not just the protection for the creditors, because if you are suspending the debt service for 2 years and you extend the tenor of the loan for 2 years, you're using the money that you would normally pay for debt service, sir, to do what? To respond to the needs of people, which is what this government this is what this government did successfully during COVID, sir, but without triggering the natural disaster clause, because we had a clear framework, sir, within which we were operating. We continue to meet our targets, sir, under the fund program, and therefore it is something that every Barbadian, sir, every Barbadian can feel a sense of pride, sir, a sense of pride that its government, already in the midst of a strong and vibrant reform program, hit with a completely unexpected challenge, sir, that we were able, sir, to meet those challenges. And the truth is, sir, I think that every Bajan should learn that lesson, sir, that no matter what, you got to find a way, sir, find a way to make sure that we can all see it through when we need to. And therefore, these debt clauses, sir, these pandemic clauses are there intended to ensure that when calamity strikes, sir, that when calamity strikes, that you're actually able, as a government, to respond. And if the Democratic Party, sir, don't understand how to govern a country, then I will ask themselves respectfully, sir, to just reconsider the mouthings that they share in the public space, because all it is, sir, is just confusing the atmosphere unnecessarily. And the truth is, sir, in today's world, people don't need any more confusion or uncertainty with respect to what's happening in their country. Now, Mr. Speaker, our debt currently is just above $14 billion. Now, the reason the debt is $14 billion is not because, sir, we went on some spending, some borrowing spree or anything, sir. The reason that the debt is $14 billion, sir, is because we had to borrow to finance the shortfall in activity, which COVID introduced, sir. But even though our debt is $14 billion, sir, I just want us to be clear. The interest costs in relation to our debt today relative to what we inherited under the Democratic Party, sir, is really chalk and cheese, sir. It's chalk and cheese. It really is. And our focus on unlocking growth, because remember after the debate, the thing was where the growth coming from, where all this thing coming from, remember that thing, the one over the growth that come from, like the what, chapter, verse, italic, sir, every reference to what's happening. And wherever you look around, sir, wherever you look around the country, so much so at one point, sir, between electrical wire, between those sockets and switches and all kinds of things, sir, at one point there was a shortage of those things because there's so much construction going on in Barbados, sir, you can't get a proper a switch. But those things will be resolved, sir, in terms of the supply chain. But we are happy, sir, that we have been placed in a position where the management of the public finances, the foreign reserves are healthy. We want to see proper, I say proper use in the context that having a lot of foreign reserves is good for the metrics, but it means that at some point over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll see we should sorry, excuse me. Can I get some? We should see some reduction in that as the usage in terms of more construction of projects coming on stream. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West has been busy facilitating, getting a number of permissions and projects out to the ground. So as these things ramp up, sir, we anticipate that obviously the usage of foreign exchange will be capable of accommodating that, as we are already seeing that within the context of the provision under the construction gateway to get more skilled people up to be able to meet the demands in relation to what will happen on that side. But equal to that, sir, you're seeing elements with respect to what is happening with respect to BADC and at Newton to be able to build out that new facility there. The Ministry of Agriculture is going to be is slated to execute its capital program for the new tissue culture lab this year. My good friend from St. John is doing his work with respect to the Youth Advanced Corps in relation to the build-out, again, for young people in this country, sir, to be able to have greater opportunity. And therefore, as we do all of these works over and above what is happening within the context of the private sector, sir, we are confident that the growth elements are fertile, sir. And I say this in the context, obviously, given that we are going through a little bit of a water restriction period at the moment, and therefore it is critically important that how we manage water resources and the like, sir, will be important given the strategic interventions that we've made to ensure that from a food security perspective that the collection of water in those ponds that the Honourable Member for St. Philip South built ahead of time to be able to capture as much rainwater for farmers to use. So again, sir, you see, it may appear to some, sir, as if nothing is happening. And therefore, when the member for St. Philip South speaks about the infrastructure works to build those ponds, people just figure, well, you're just digging a big hole in the ground and you're wasting money. But you don't understand, sir, the wisdom as to why you needed to capture as much rainwater to be able to ensure then that the water supply in relation to agriculture is as sound as possible. There are a few more that will need to be done, but in the context drought, which we're currently experiencing, and Barbadians seeing that you need to restrict yourself with respect to the usage of potable water. All of these things are integrated, sir, and form part of the growth strategy. Now, it will manifest itself, sir, very, very, very clearly when we're able to see not just, as we say, physical projects come out to the ground, but it is really about how quickly we can ensure that these things can be executed. And that is why the government has been playing such a much more aggressive role facilitating the execution of these projects, because whatever needs to be done in relation to bringing things to reality, sir, we now need to be able to advance, and that's why we've been asking people to do things in almost like a simultaneous manner to be able to shorten timelines, because we understand, sir, the importance of being able to grow this economy, sir, and the truth is, sir, the fundamentals are there and in place which can breed growth, for lack of a better term, sir. And that's why I said, sir, the conditions are fertile, and therefore every effort now must be made by every Bajan, sir, at all levels. No matter the size or the scale of the investment, sir, we must be able to execute it, and execute it quickly. So, I speak of growth because, as I said at the beginning, sir, when we came to office, all four things that were critical to the economy were out of sync. We had poor fiscal management, we had no growth, little foreign reserves, and the debt was high. Now, sir, everything is pretty much in its right place. Our debt trajectory is on its way down. On its way down. 2035, 36 is still the target. Currently, it's on its way down, and therefore, as we continue to grow the economy, we are in a position to ensure then that not just the debt service, but equally, sir, it means then that we are able to leverage the full balance sheet of government to be able to ensure then that the entire economy can be as resilient as possible. Now, Mr. Speaker, we are also going to be, we've started a process of trying to, sorry, that's bad language. We are rebasing, sir, the economy and focusing first and foremost, sir, on how to better capture matters of informality as it relates to the economy. And part of the reason for that, sir, is that over the years, we have always made assumptions about if we've made assumptions in national accounting parlance, sir, they refer to it as imputations. But you make assumptions, sir, about what you know. This is the actual data that you've captured, and you assume, okay, this represents approximately 70–80% of the activity within the specific sector, and as there are elements of informality in certain parts of the economy, and therefore we are making an effort to be able to better capture that informality. Now, I say to Barbadians, sir, this is not the time to be running from the BRA or to be running from the NIS, sir. This is not the time to be running from the BRA or the NIS. The stark reality is that all of us, sir, send our children to school. All of us, sir, drive on the roads, no matter how good or bad the roads may be, wherever you may be driving on. All of us, sir, at some point have to utilize some type of healthcare facility, whether it's a polyclinic, sir, whether it is a QEH, whether it's a district hospital or some facility, sir. All of us have a responsibility in it. And therefore, we have to be responsible citizens. And the government of Barbados' posture when it comes to looking at rebasing the economy is that the truth is, sir, I want your business to do as much business as it could possibly do. And therefore, if I am aware as to, I have all the right information, sir, about the business that you're engaged in, then through policy, I can actually craft policy that is actually going to help you make more money. But I can't be guessing, sir, all the time, every year, guessing as to what the lay of the land is. But as part of that civic responsibility, sir, it means, sir, everybody got to put piece in the pot, because everybody putting piece in the pot, sir, means that we can respond faster when things go wrong. And therefore, it is important that the exercise of rebasing the economy and looking at measure of eliminating elements of informality. And I'm not saying informal just for the avoidance of any doubt, sir. The informality, there's nothing wrong with being informal. But we're saying that we want enterprises to grow. We want enterprises to export. We want to create a platform where any Bajan, no matter what you're doing, sir, that you can sell your goods and services globally. Now, some people might be doing a little hobby thing, a little something on a Friday and Saturday. That's fine, sir. That's okay to do a little something on a Friday and Saturday. But we want that when you do a little something on a Friday and Saturday, that you make as much money on Friday and Saturday. And when you make as much money on a Friday and Saturday, sir, 52 weeks of the year, that you put a little something in the pot, sir. Because at the end of the day, sir, at the end of the day, there are certain things from a collective responsibility, sir, that we cannot ever escape from. And the provision of collective services, sir, is something that none of us can escape. So you can decide, sir, whether you can call the police or not, but the police provides a certain monopoly of force, if you like, sir, and the systems of government provide a certain monopoly of force in the country that allows us as citizens to go about our business safely, and therefore collective services, these things have to be financed. And therefore, rather than having to, I would rather, sir, and this is not to in any way diminish the contributions of any of the persons within law enforcement, but we have invested significant sums within that space over the last 5 years to beef up the capacity of those services. Now, the reality of it is, by the same token, we have expanded investment in education and health equally to be able to ensure that we can level the playing field with respect to that, which is why the reforms that are being contemplated, sir, are going to be critically important for determining where you allocate resources in the future. And therefore, what we want to get to a stage, sir, is where in all of what we are doing, it will have a significant impact, sir, on how resilient we can build this country. It will mean that rather than having to spend money, sir, on potentially, sir, law enforcement, that some of those resources can be allocated elsewhere, because we found the sweet spot, if you like, sir, with respect to where we are in relation to having to enforce, rather than providing opportunities for people then, sir, to be able to operate. And therefore, that measure of informality as we know it, sir, if we can find a path for moving from informal to formal, sir, that makes a big difference in terms of the response, in terms of allocation of specific resources. And therefore, again, as part of what we have to contemplate is with the transformation intended across a number of areas of the country and certainly of the economy, sir, then doing things differently will be important for both the average citizen, the average business person, in terms of the opportunities and the sectors within which we feel can be opened up. And therefore, as part of the reform effort overall, sir, we see opportunities where unlocking the potential of certainly of everybody, but specifically on young people, will provide opportunities for significant growth. And ultimately, sir, as I said, if people understand the investment that is being made collectively by taxpayers across the board, then we understand that as responsible citizens, that as we are all benefited from that investment, that there's an obligation, sir, to make sure that you put something back in, because the next generation, sir, as I tell my constituents, I will pay, sir, any amount of tax to ensure that people can have access to free education, sir. Because as a boy growing up in Bank Hall, sir, I know that my mother and my grandmother, sir, couldn't afford to send me to the university. and therefore we have an obligation within a small state, sir, within a small state, to ensure that, one, yes, we get value for money, and that is important, but we cannot afford, sir, at any time, to limit what is possible, sir, for our people. And those 20,000 persons that I told you, sir, that is the cumulative impact of not having gone to university, sir, within the last 10 years or so. In as much as we have been having discussions around the Population Commission, we are going to start to see the impact of that, sir, very, very, very shortly, because it means that as people are to move into middle management and those types of areas, you're going to start to see within the system that there are going to be elements where you're going to have some augmentation in relation to that. And I hope that Barbadians will understand that the consequences of those types of decisions are not just budgetary, sir, in the fiscal years that were there, but they will have a lasting impact upon the development trajectory of this country. And that's why, as I said, sir, any government that impairs the ability of young people, sir, any government that impairs the ability of young people is not just doing itself a disservice, but is really doing the country a disservice for the long term. But I hope they've learned that lesson, sir. I hope the country has learned that lesson, because it comes down, sir, to choices. And this government, we have chosen at every instance to ensure that we can maintain a measure of stability, not just within the country, but certainly within households, because as you know very well, sir, the consequences of how generations overlap positively and or negatively, sir, makes a difference between what is inherited, what is carried forward, sir, and therefore it is important that as a government we do not then further inflame or make worse the conditions that may already exist within our household. So therefore, continuing to invest, sir, in young people is really, sir, for lack of a better term, is really a down payment on how best you can manage any debt situation, sir, in 15, 20 years, because if you don't invest in those young people to be able to earn as much as possible, sir, in order to put something back in the pot, sir, more than the parents put in, more than the grandparents put in, sir, then you're not making sense of the development trajectory. And therefore, you can't talk about managing debt if you cause 20,000 people, sir, young people, not to access tertiary education because you introduce tuition fees, sir. And that, sir, is one of the most heinous and dastardly policies that I've ever seen introduced in a small state that prided itself, sir, in investing in people. No, so, sir, this bill today, as I told you, sir, at the very beginning, was meant to be a relatively routine bill. As I told you, it is, but in a lot of ways, sir, it isn't. And I feel very strongly that Bajans, as we continue to engage, do consultations, and we will continue to do it, sir, because it has to be driven home, sir, that the compact, the connection that your government has with its people, sir, is not just something that happens every 5 years or so, sir, in a booth. It happens with the policies that the government introduces to make sure that it can help to improve the lives of Barbadians. And so, sir, I don't want to dwell much longer on this particular subject, but I felt it was important this morning, sir, to give a wider context with respect to the management of public debt. It actually makes a significant difference, sir, to the type of opportunities and the elements of growth for the economy. This is not even so much about economics, sir. This is about how you develop a country. And a country cannot, as small as Barbados, that does not produce all of what it needs, sir, a country the size of Barbados, sir, cannot, whether it is public debt or private debt, sir, in our lives, none of us, unless, sir, well, most of us, sir, will not even contemplate of getting a home unless we had to engage some type of mortgage. There's some of us, sir, who may be able to do it out of pocket, but it will take a little longer, which is no problem, sir. But that means that you're saving rather than using those savings to finance the very mortgage. And there's nothing wrong with that. But a country that wants the best for its citizens, sir, will leverage the benefit that if you invest in your young people, sir, and you back your young people to be able to not just get through school, but to start businesses, get meaningful employment, sir, employ other people, that the return on that investment that we make on them during school and that platform, sir, that you have to back your people, sir, in order to make sure you can generate sufficient more income than your parents' generation did, sir, and that your grandparents did. But there are certain things, sir, that must be consistent. And one of the things that we believe, sir, is that we must be able to reconnect and let our young people understand, too, that whilst you may come up today, sir, and everything is here, so you got internet, sir, you got nice schools, you got nice facilities and all these types of things. The reality is that somebody worked real hard to put them there. And therefore, the maintenance of that, sir, is important to understand, that things don't just happen. And therefore, the same discipline that my grandmother, sir, and your grandmother, my mother, your mother, sir, the same discipline that everybody had to go through to build this country, the young people of today, with all of the advantages that we have globally, must have that same ethos, that you got to get up, sir, and work hard, work smart, I agree, but work hard, because the time that it will take to get things done, we expect them to do it faster. We need to give them the tools to be able to do that, such that we're able, sir, to accelerate the creation of wealth, such that that generational impact in terms of creating wealth and passing on from one generation to the next, that can be assured. And therefore, whether that means that within your personal circumstance, in your business circumstance, sir, understanding the difference between when to borrow, when to use your cash resources, when to take on equity within the context of your enterprise, who to bring on, and separating ownership, sir, from management, and all of these types of things, sir, are equally important with respect to how we are going to create wealth and continue to create wealth within certainly the ordinary communities across Barbados, and recognizing that if I have to work with you, sir, I don't have to like you to work with you to be able to achieve the objective. And therefore, this idea that black people, you can't trust black people and all this kind of thing, sir, there are structures that you can put in place to be able to relieve that, because that is part of what is holding us back. And the reality is too, sir, and I'll end on this point because it's important, that sometimes, sir, we've done ourselves a disservice as families. So a family would be very good at building a business, and you tell the child, man, I don't want you to do this here, I want you to do something better than this, sir. And that continues, sir, to be, I believe, sir, the wrong message for our young people, because it's okay to say you want people to do better, but this business, sir, whatever it is, whether it is the tray, sir, whether it is the needle worker, sir, whatever it is, that business is what put food on the table, sir. And therefore, we must encourage our young people to understand that if they have an obligation to see where they can carry these businesses to a different level, because these are the very basic things, sir, that fed all of us coming up in communities, sir, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, sir. There's an element of how we can take those structures and bring the appropriate, as I said, management and financing in place to be able to leverage it, such that the generational poverty that overlaps, one, and two, that when we're talking about debt and sustainability, that if family businesses are able to continue to thrive, then it means that we must open up our minds, not just to allowing our children to take over said opportunities, but we cannot continue to tell them, sir, that I want you to go and do something better than this, when this is a legitimate, credible means of earning a living, and therefore we must be capable of finding the appropriate structures that will help us to do that. And that's why, sir, I feel confident that the introduction of the financial literacy program will help to close some of those gaps, but we're talking about transformation and a culture shift, which you know will take some time. And so, sir, this debate, as I said, multifaceted. I hope that I was able to make it as clear as possible, sir, that these clauses here are for the protection in the sense of the creditor, but equally, sir, that should any government have to invoke these clauses, that we understand that these will be resources that will be made available to help respond to the crisis without adding additional debt, as was the case, as you know, sir, a few years ago when one of our neighboring countries had a couple of hurricanes in 2 years, and as you're recovering from the first one, the second one hit, and you had to borrow again to be able to do that, and you cause a build-up in debt. And therefore, these types of clauses here are critically important for how you manage your debt stock, sir, how you manage your debt stock. And therefore, we feel confident that as we are seeing through the advocacy of the Prime Minister globally, sir, we are seeing more and more countries adopting these clauses with respect to lending. From our perspective, sir, we've already seen the IDB adopt within 5 of their structures with us. We've seen from the CDB as well, I believe, sir, and others are coming on board with respect to having these clauses issued within the contracts in order to have that certainty with respect to what is happening from the debt side. And so as we re-emerge, sir, and open up the domestic capital markets, these will become a feature. As I said, sir, I really hope that we never, ever have to use them, because I hope that we will be able to, through the innovations that we are proposing and making happen, that we can build enough financial resilience, we can build enough economic resilience, we can build enough physical resilience, that whenever there is some event, that we can minimize the disruption, and therefore allowing us to be able to recover as quickly as possible without having to have experienced by ordinary Barbadians any significant disruption. And so, sir, with those very few words, I will beg, sir, to move that this bill be read a second time. I'm obliged.
Second.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I, too, want to join the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central in supporting this bill that is before the House. And to spend, he said he used a few words, mine are going to be fewer than his, and that is normal. But I think we need to say a little bit about debt, and maybe just a little bit more about broader economic management. Because while I have promised myself on coming to office and being elected by the people in St. Peter to represent them here, I'd promised not to take on stupidity too much, not to get into situations where, you're just responding to foolishness. But I think that from time to time, one has to, and last time I spoke, or one of the last times I spoke in this honorable chamber, I spoke about not being perfect and sometimes making mistakes and having to come back to correct them. And I like to remind myself of that, because I don't want either to feel or to give anybody the impression that I am perfect. And so while I made that decision up front, I've realized that sometimes innocent people are damaged through the silliness of others. I'm not talking about the mistakes of others. You know, you can get into a car accident through somebody's mistake. You may blink, you look away, something happens. But sometimes there are those out there who are either, well, deliberately silly, and innocent people get caught up. And so I think I want to just spend a few moments maybe reinforcing some of what the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central spoke to this morning. And maybe you could say that what I'm saying is probably more for the leadership of the Democratic Labour Party and not the people of Barbados, because I agree with him that the majority of the people get it. But there are still a few persons, those who masquerade as leaders, who don't seem to get it. And I am not going to be harsh. I think, you know, if you see somebody struggling, you really should help them. And there are a couple of people in the leadership of the party, of the Democratic Labour Party, who are obviously struggling. And I've made a decision not to be political, but to help where I think I can help. They can take the help, or they can curse me about it. That doesn't really matter, because I think it is my duty to try to help them along. Now, it's already being shared. The Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central has already said, but I'm going to repeat, that those who are in leadership and who understand how the country is managed, if there are loans that a government has, then those loans are laid here in this Honourable Chamber, because it is public information. The estimates of revenue and expenditure contain the details for those loans. So things like interest rates, you don't have to go on the radio and holler hard to get the information. The information is already public information. So I'm not going to identify anybody, because it is not my intent to embarrass. But you know, those in leadership need to be able to know where the information is, especially when the public already knows. So I don't want anybody to embarrass themselves by suggesting to a knowledgeable public that information that they already have is being hidden somewhere. It is already public, published in some large volumes, but also online on Parliament's website. Now, debt is not a strange word to any Barbadian, even to the most affluent of Barbadians. It is recognized that debt or borrowing is something that is used strategically. It is something that is used in a developmental fashion, so that it is understood that debt is used for long-term development. So that an individual, for example, wants to buy a vehicle. That vehicle may cost $50,000, and I realize that even the reconditioned vehicles nowadays may be in that kind of price range. There are very few Barbadians, Mr. Speaker, who have that kind of money, as we would say, put down in a tot, wrap up in a kerchief, in a bank, or best of all, in a credit union. Very few Barbadians who have that kind of money put aside. We have grown up understanding that there are times when you have to go to the bank, or the credit union, or the coolie man, or the places in town that sell furniture that may not last as long as our foreparents built furniture. But sometimes we have to go to these places or people in order to be able to obtain the things that will help to give us that qualitative movement forward in terms of our development. So we do it for houses. Sometimes we have to do it for a fridge that breaks down on us, and we haven't saved up enough to replace it. We got to go and maybe take it on hire purchase, or go to the credit union, which is what I would advocate. The Honourable Member spoke to the financial literacy. So I do not promote to my constituents or to any others hire purchase. I consider it, I almost said highway robbery, but it may not be exactly highway robbery, but it's probably one of the closest examples that we have to robbery. So I would suggest, I'm not trying to take any bread out of anybody's mouth. Go to the credit union and borrow the money and pay the place in town. So that is what we do, Mr. Speaker, and have done for many generations to move ourselves forward. I've not even spoken about getting a house. We often put ourselves in debt. We borrow so that we can develop ourselves. There are persons who borrow. We have had for quite some time a student revolving loan fund. And that student revolving loan fund is constructed with the understanding that there are persons who, in an effort to advance themselves academically, in an effort to help their families escape poverty, will need to borrow some funds in order to be able to pursue studies overseas or at some higher level than is available here. And so, Mr. Speaker, similarly, countries also borrow. Countries borrow to move themselves forward. Countries borrow to develop their infrastructure because countries recognize that in order to develop economically, the country needs a proper infrastructure. You need to be able to provide transportation routes. You need to be able to provide ports, either for aircraft or for ships. Countries also borrow for purposes of education, maybe building educational institutions. Countries borrow as well for health care, because between education and health care, people have to be looked after. And so you don't take up bits of money to try to build a hospital, for example. You borrow, you build a hospital, you outfit it, and then out of your recurring expenditure, in the individual case, out of your weekly wages or your monthly salary, then you service the debt to pay off for that. Now, Mr. Speaker, I hope that I'm not boring you, but like I said at the beginning, I put you on notice. There is a certain level of explanation that has to be given to those who aspire to lead the country, but who do not yet comprehend fully how these things work. So I want you really, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues to bear with me. The Democratic Labour Party is not a stranger to debt. They give that impression. The Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central said in here on some occasion, when we came to office, they were so familiar. They were $18.1 billion familiar with debt. That is what we inherited when we came to office. They knew that well. But Mr. Speaker, you know what they spent borrowed money on? They were paying wages and salaries with borrowed money. They were buying toilet paper with borrowed money. That's not an investment. That is something that you clean yourself with. They were borrowing money to buy Discipline. They were borrowing money to buy paper clips and to buy staples and staple machines. That is what they were doing with money. Mr. Speaker, that could hardly be considered investing. That could hardly be considered putting money into developing in a structured, systematic way a country that will allow for returns in the future. Toilet paper doesn't do that. Paper clips doesn't do that. Staple machines don't do that. I am getting the impression that the Democratic Labour Party is trying to distance itself from its very nature. And I just want to say to those who lead, you really can't distance yourself from your nature. You could try to distance yourself from people, but you can't distance yourself from your nature. It is who they are. Now, the important thing about debt, Mr. Speaker, is that it must be manageable. Debt must be manageable. So I spoke initially about the purpose of debt. It must be strategic and developmental, but the debt must also be manageable. So even though we may have great intentions, if the debt is not manageable, then we may have to say, like we say to our children sometimes, this is good, I wish I could buy it for you, but you're going to have to wait while I accumulate some money. Debt must be manageable. When we came to office, one commentator said, and I have no pleasure in saying this, but one commentator indicated that in May of 2018, Barbados was borrowing to service its debt. Borrowing to service debt. One commentator writing in Forbes magazine, a respected journal. This Barbados Labour Party government took the decision, a deliberate decision, a bold decision. And I emphasize bold because what we found when we came to office was the result of a Democratic Labour Party government that had no guts, did not face up. The person, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member who preceded me as Member of Parliament for the constituency of St. Peter, stood right here at the end on this side of the chamber. This side of the chamber occupied by the government. He stood right in that location and begged the government to do something about restructuring the debt. They were so fearful, so unlearned, so inexperienced that they did not even take the advice of somebody who was no longer a part of the Barbados Labour Party. It was a ridiculous state of affairs. And so we came into office in an untenable situation, having to face a debt payment in about 2 months, I think, 6 weeks, that would have wiped out the foreign reserves, the couple of weeks foreign reserves that those bad managers left. That payment would have wiped us out clean. Cleaner than the toilet paper that they were buying with the debt that they had incurred. We made the decision, approached the International Monetary Fund, and said to the leaders of the fund that we have no choice but to not pay, and that is something that no country likes to do. But we are of a culture, Mr. Speaker, where when we are faced with challenges, we know that our job is to face it and fix it. And the fixing is not always pleasant, but we did it. So we intentionally defaulted on our loan, and we went about immediately the work of restructuring the debt. Now, Mr. Speaker, we didn't do that out of any prophetic gift. And I'm not sure the Honourable Member for St. James South may not agree with me with this, because God works in mysterious ways. So there might have been something prophetic about our action. But when we did it, we were not aware. We were not aware. We didn't know about COVID being around the corner. We did not know about hurricane. We did not know of freak storm. We did not know of volcanoes erupting nearby. But we went about restructuring our debt. And I, Mr. Speaker, have spoken to many people since we did that. And there is an interesting dynamic at work. I have many friends who are supporters of the Democratic Labour Party, good friends and good people. And when I ask them what would have happened if we were not in office and the debt was not restructured, and they usually cringe their faces and look away. They do not want to think about where this country would be if we were not in office and had not taken the important step that we took. Now, Barbados Labour Party supporters will say we would be dead, and they're probably correct. Dead from a lot more persons would have died from the pandemic. And who knows what the social dislocation would have caused in terms of criminal activity, in terms of homicides. But it is recognized by all, across the board, across any political divide, that what this Barbados Labour Party did in 2018 was appropriate, it was bold, it was strategic, it made sense, and the results, everything that has happened subsequently, has supported the view that this Barbados Labour Party understands how not only to manage a country, not only to manage a government, but how to manage debt. This party in government understands it. And we don't understand it in theory. We understand it. It is clearly seen from our actions as the managers of the entire Barbados society and economy. Now, I mentioned the pandemic. I mentioned the hurricane, the volcanic eruption, the freak storm. All of these, Mr. Speaker, and sometimes when I think about it, I ask myself if it is real. All of these we have had to face as a government and as a party in government. We have faced, in a short period of time, some catastrophes that many generations have not had to face in that period, such a short period of time. And Mr. Speaker, we have faced those challenges. We have, as all of us will say to you, rolled up our sleeves and have faced them. We have faced them down to the point where even after all of those challenges, our debt, the debt of this country, has moved from over $18 billion to $14 billion. Now, there are those out there who give the impression that our debt has risen since we came to office. What they are not saying to the people of Barbados is that our debt has risen from the low of when we restructured our debt. So we came to office with debt of $18 billion, over $18 billion. We were able to reduce our debt to below $14 billion. But we've had to deal with the multiple crises that I've referred to just now. And even after addressing those multiple crises, our debt is still $4 billion below what the Democratic Labour Party government left for us. $4 billion less than what the Democratic Labour Party government left for us. After facing COVID and building almost a new hospital, after paying for all the COVID tests that we've administered to our people, after the cleanup, after the ash, building houses for persons whose houses were damaged or destroyed, and we're still in the process of doing that. After all of this, Mr. Speaker, we're talking about buying toilet paper and paper clips and all those kind of things. But as the Honourable Member for St. Thomas is reminding me, and the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central was very clear, this stopped a woman from Emboscabel from being able to complete university. And I have not forgiven the Democratic Labour Party for that. She had to choose whether her daughter would finish university or she would finish university. The dreams of Barbadians, Mr. Speaker, were shattered. Poor people had to pay for university education. People had to wait weeks and months sometimes to get garbage collected. And buses, you can't find buses on the road. So this is what we inherited with over $18 billion in debt. We are now at $14 billion, so we are less than what the Democratic Labour Party left. $4 billion less than what the Democratic Labour Party left. But, Mr. Speaker, our young people are accessing tertiary level education without having to pay for it at the point of delivery. Our garbage is being collected much more frequently than in the early months of 2018. $4 billion less in debt. We have electric buses on the roads. $4 billion less in debt. We have a hospital at Harrison's Point. $4 billion less in debt. Mr. Speaker, I don't think I have to go on much longer. I think you get the picture. And I think that Barbadians get the picture. And yes, we can now go to Worthing Square and know that the food will not have any traces of feces. Sewage was running in the street. There's no sewage running in the street on the South Coast today. But our debt is $4 billion less than what the Democratic Labour Party left in office when they left office. Well, when they were removed from office by the people of this country. Now, before I sit down, there is something that I really need to address. International confidence in Barbados and in Barbados' economy remains strong. I have had just a little bit of exposure to economics. And like I said a few minutes ago, defaulting on debt is most countries' one of their worst nightmares. Reputational damage. I am still amazed, Mr. Speaker, and I want Barbadians to understand the level of confidence that is out there in this country and in its leadership. Because if you subject yourself only to the drivel that comes from the leadership of the opposition party, you will be fooled into thinking that there is a lack of confidence. When Barbados decided to default on its debt, Mr. Speaker, within minutes, the International Monetary Fund issued a statement supporting Barbados's decision. An international financial institution that before some had said had no interest really in helping developing countries, recognized the wisdom in our decision, but also recognized the bold nature of the decision and issued an official statement on their website supporting the decision of the Barbados government. Ever since then, Mr. Speaker, we've either had upgrades or a maintenance of our grading by the international institutions. And always with either a stable or positive outlook. They're looking to the future as well. That is how the international financial community views Barbados. That is the kind of confidence they have in this country and in its leadership. But I want to say something else. I don't know who used the begging bowl term. It is unpatriotic, one, but as a Christian, I think I am more concerned with the fact that it is untrue. In other words, that is a lie. And it is a lie because all the international commentators are indicating, continue to indicate, that when our Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, when our Prime Minister goes into international fora, they are saying that for the first time, they are hearing leaders of developing countries, or a leader of a developing country, not cussing and quarreling and begging, but bringing solutions to the table. Bringing solutions to the table. An international financial magazine said after the COP in Glasgow that the Prime Minister's speech was laden with solutions. We have a situation now where the President of France wants to host and will be hosting a summit to move the Bresson initiative forward. We are living at a time when the United Nations Secretary General is asking the Prime Minister, tell me some more about this fantastic idea. Come up, sit down with me and share about this idea, this Bresson initiative. We are putting solutions on the table. We're not walking about begging for anything. As a matter of fact, there are people who are walking about begging Barbadians to put them in government. That is the begging that is taking place in Barbados. People are walking about in Barbados, calling programs, begging Barbadians, put me back in the government, put me back in the House of Assembly. We get wiped out twice, but put me back. That is the begging that is taking place in this country. There's nobody from this Barbados Labour Party government, including the Prime Minister, begging for anything. as a matter of fact, not just for Barbados, we are delivering for small island developing states across the world. For the first time, small island states are being heard, being seen, being felt because of the advocacy of our Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the amendment that we are debating, this bill that we are debating today, is an initiative from the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, the Honourable Prime Minister. This is an idea that now has international currency, since we're talking about finance. It now has international currency because it's being effectively driven on the international stage by our Prime Minister. We now have international financial institutions, including the development financial institutions, who recognize that these clauses are necessary. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I get the impression that that institution that was created and named to develop the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, because we call it the World Bank. Maybe it's the World's Bank, but it's a bank that was created, an institution that was created for reconstruction and development. And it seems to me that because of the advocacy of this government and our Prime Minister, that they recognize that part of their role now is to ensure that small states, including small island developing states, are allowed the room and the capacity to develop and not to become failed states or mendicant states. These clauses, Mr. Speaker, allow Barbados to be able to manage when we are unsure about the future, when we do not know when the next tragedy will strike. Interest rates are market-driven. And I would like to encourage those who lead political parties. When you're in opposition, you have a lot more time on your hands. And I'd like to encourage them to spend some of that time just listening to the news. A couple of newscasts will tell you that interest rates and the increase in interest rates globally are becoming a challenge. It is big news to try to figure out what the Bank of England will do next, what the Federal Reserve will do next. Interest rates are rising. They're not just rising in Barbados. Interest rates are rising so that when people walk about talking about the fact that we have said that interest rates are rising, and when we speak to the impact, I get the impression sometimes that those folk who are in opposition, who are currently in opposition, still hold on to the view that caused them to get kicked out of government. And that is that you have to hide things from people. This government does not hide information from those who we represent. And if the increase in interest rates means that there is increased outflow, we say that to the people. We are here to represent the people. We are open to the people. We rub shoulders, we listen, we act, and we share the information. Whether the information is good information, good news, or whether it is not so good news, we share with our people. Interest rate movements, increases, are a global reality. Economic instability internationally is a reality. Mr. Speaker, in the face of all of this reality that everybody except some people know, this Barbados Labour Party government has done a good job in managing this country, managing its economy, and managing its debt. Those who know and those who understand recognize that this government understands what it is doing. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I am happy to be a part of government who can develop a homegrown program, like the BERT plan. A homegrown program. You may remember, Mr. Speaker, that there was a time in the history of this country when the term homegrown sent shivers down your spine. Because the Dems had a range of homegrown policies. Now, when I hear grow or grown, I think of a plant moving upward. The homegrown that we had become accustomed to meant downgrades and downgrades. I can understand the growth. I think of growth as going up. Maybe it's because of my height. I used to be much shorter, and I've grown. So when I think of growth, I think of going up. Their homegrown used to take you down. The homegrown of this government is uplifting. It moves the country forward. And Mr. Speaker, this bill is part of the recognition that the management of this country, the management of the economy, the management of the debt is in good hands. The people of this country do not have a reason to fear the work and the skill and the aptitude of this government. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and I commend it not just to this chamber, but I commend it to the people of Barbados.
Honourable Member St. James South.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and let me congratulate the two speakers who've gone before me, who have done an excellent job in capturing what it is we have done for this country, and to give people the confidence that their affairs are being managed well, and that they can have confidence not only in the plan of the Barbados Labour Party, but also in the government and the administration of their affairs. I therefore don't want to necessarily go over what they have shared, but just to add a couple of thoughts that I would like Barbadians to take into consideration. I too have been very concerned with the narrative that has been exposed in the public space, trying to make Barbadians afraid and nervous about the level of debt which Barbados has. And I think that it has been dealt with wonderfully just now, because Barbadians were put in the position to ask themselves to borrow or not to borrow. And what we've been trying to tell them, that had we not borrowed, all would have been lost. And anybody who could get in the public space and declare that the level of borrowing that we have been undertaking is risky, it has put us in a dangerous position, is either not following what is happening with the economic development here in Barbados, with the economic plans, the financial plans, or they're being disingenuous when they try to alarm Barbadians about the level of debt and borrowing. One of the things I want to put to the people of Barbados is this: your business and your life is in good hands, and you can trust that at all times we are going to do what we believe to be in the best interest of every Barbadian. And you can see it from the various plans that we have implemented from the time we were talking about Mission Critical all the way through now to Mission Transformation. But I just want to say this to Barbadians. No one, and you know it from your personal life, Mr. Speaker, nobody's going to lend you money if you are a risky proposition. They don't. If they lend you, they will lend you at exorbitant rates. What Barbados has been able to do is to so inspire the confidence in the international lending agencies and inspire confidence in the people who measure and who monitor the performance of the Barbadian economy. And we have helped them to understand we know our business and we know what we are doing. So they would not have lent us that money if they were not convinced that we could pay back. And what's the evidence of this, sir? The first thing was our BERT program. Barbados was one of the first countries to sit down and work and design the type of transformation program that it wanted with the IMF. The IMF was so confident and felt so secure in what we put on the table for consideration. They said, yes, we can support and we can sign off on this program and we can lend you based on it. This is sensible, it is prudent, but it is also an aggressive program that will put Barbados back on track. The IMF had confidence in us. And I want to congratulate all the honourable members in this chamber and their teams that have worked to produce a BERT program that has been able to inspire the IMF with confidence to work with Barbados. But that is not all that occurred. When that expired, Barbados then had to discuss whether or not we should continue with our BERT program, should we remain in the IMF program, or should we discontinue? And we again took the prudent road. We knew that there were uncertain times in front of us, just as we did not know COVID would happen, storm and ash would happen. We knew that we were in very uncertain times and therefore could not guarantee what the immediate future would hold. And we said it would be prudent for us to do BERT version 2. And sir, that again was another mark of confidence by the IMF, that they not only accepted us back in the program, but signed off on the program that we put in front of them to take Barbados out of harm's way and to put us on a track for prosperity. And therefore, it is important for Barbadians to understand that across the world, among the multilateral agencies, there is confidence in the Barbadian economy and confidence in its management. The second mark of confidence, sir, would have been mentioned by some of the other speakers, and that is the Bridgetown Initiative. Sir, if ever there was a transformative program of action that would not only help little Barbados or CARICOM, this program would change the global financial architecture in such a way as to give all developing countries a chance to be able to have access to affordable financing, to be able to have terms and conditions which they could manage, and have conditions that would assist them should something untoward occur, so that they can respond not only to a climatic event, but they can continue on their journey of economic development. Because here's the truth, sir. When you have COVID, when you have a logistics crisis, when you have a war that is affecting costs, and fuel costs are rising, and inflation is galloping, and you seek to respond as a small nation to those crises, it means that you do not have enough resources to continue the journey of social and economic development for your people. That while you're trying to respond to a climate crisis, you cannot respond to a crisis in the schools. That while you're trying to respond to a logistics and fuel crisis, you cannot respond to healthcare needs. This is the reality facing many, many countries across the world. And there are dozens that are right now so highly indebted and on the brink of failure that if this Bridgetown Initiative is not adopted very quickly by the world, we are going to see a number of countries fall and despair among millions of people. And I'm telling you, sir, the forced migration that we have been seeing from Latin America into the United States, from out of Africa into Europe, that will look like a cakewalk, because more and more people will be forced to leave their countries to find safe harbor. So, sir, the Bridgetown Initiative is a powerful initiative for global transformation, and that is why it has been acclaimed so highly across the world and has been accepted and inserted into a number of statements made by a number of institutions. They are willing to adopt and support the Bridgetown Initiative and sit and talk through how we are going to put it in place. The last two that I was involved in would have been the OACP. The African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries agreed to insert this in their statement. and to support it whenever it should come up for discussion in the right fora. The ACS just recently agreed to include it in their statement because across the world, countries have recognized that this particular initiative is one that all of us need to embrace. And if we are to avoid, sir, if we are to avoid the coming geopolitical conflicts that are happening across the world, where you have the BRICS countries on one side and you have the developed countries on the other side, if we are to avoid conflict that we cannot manage, it is important that the world sits down around things like the Bridgetown Initiative and put it in place so that all countries together can go forward. And I really want to sincerely recommend this to Barbadians. The last thing I want to share with you, sir, is this. The BOSS bonds are bonds that are important for Barbados. Actually, sir, it could transform how we do business in this country. Barbadians generally are a nation of savers. And Barbadians normally like to keep their money in the bank, in the credit union. Barbadians have been hesitant to look at new, fresh, innovative ways to take that money and turn it into more money. It is true, we have generally been risk-averse. Even, sir, when it comes to family members maybe starting a business and needing some capital to start, there are many families love the person dearly, but they're not about to give them money to start a business. If they get into trouble, though, and they have to go before the court for debt, they will then haul out all that money and come and try and help pay it because they don't want the shame of a family member going through the court. But the truth is, that family member could have done with that money ahead of time. One of the things that this government has been studying for some time, how are we going to take the millions of dollars that are locked up within our banking system, how can we make sure that it can be put to good use to help advance Barbadians? Because right now, Barbadians aren't benefiting in any way from their savings. As a matter of fact, they're into this saving because the interest rate is not only extremely low, the bank now is asking for commitment fees, this fee, the next fee. So what they're doing is busy eating away at the savings of Barbadians, and therefore Barbadians are not making any money on their savings. At the same time, the bank is lending that money out to various projects and various opportunities, and they are making money on it. 12%, 15%, 18%, and don't talk about the percentage on credit cards. So the question before this country was, how can we mobilize the domestic savings of our citizens? How can we put opportunities on the ground for pension plans and insurance companies that they can look to buy into something that can not only help to make money for the institution, but would at the same time grow the Barbadian economy? The Barbados government sat and developed the plan to put out the BOSS bonds, to give Barbadians the opportunity to earn a decent return on their money, to take that money and to put it into economic development, whether it is what we're doing in agriculture, whether it's what we're trying to do in services, whether it's what we're trying to do in agro-processing, whether it's to put it in tourism. We have sought ways to raise money domestically to give Barbadians a better return on their savings and at the same time position this country to be able to put money in the productive sectors, etc., and infrastructure so that this economy can grow and generate the jobs which our young people need. Generate the opportunities for wealth creation which the ordinary Barbadian needs to be a part of. Now, sir, why should Barbadians have confidence in BOSS bonds? Should they be afraid to take their money and put it there? Sir, no, they don't have to be afraid. The reason being, sir, that those are protected. They are protected from any haircuts. Sir, those bonds were bought by a bank here in Barbados. Significant millions of dollars were purchased by a bank because they had confidence in the boss bonds. And this is the reason why we have to put out another tranche. Now, if the banks who already had a haircut could buy boss bonds, how much more confident should the ordinary Barbadian be in making sure that they too get in on it and get better returns for their savings? And so I want to commend the boss bonds to the Barbadian public. I want to encourage them to get as much information. If they have questions, they can call and ask their questions so that they can understand how it works, so that they can feel assured that they too can be a part of the growth strategy of this country and take their money and position it in a way that will benefit every Barbadian, that will be able to give a jump start to our engine, to give it a further jump so that we can go down the road with confidence and make our way in this changing global environment. So what are we doing as a country right now, sir, in comparison to what would have happened under the Democratic Labour Party? Sir, we are making our mark on history's page. And we are making that mark first on our local history page, and we are definitely making a mark on the international history's page. The brand of Barbados is strong and it's good. In the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, we butt up on it all of the time. The confidence that people have in this country and the confidence they have in the leadership. And I want to encourage Barbadians, you too can have confidence in your leadership. You too can put some money in boss bonds and be a part of the growth of the Barbadian economy. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Christchurch East Central.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me thank honourable members for their contributions. I must say that I was listening to the Honourable Member for St. Peter, and I must say to him that he's clearly a better Christian than I am, because I feel that when people see fire, you shouldn't have to put your hand in it to know that it is fire. So I commend you, sir, for your compassion. But be that as it may, I think it is important that in following on from what the Honourable Member for St. James South has indicated in relation to investing in your country, sir. And as you know, sir, and I don't mean in any way to sound glib, but in life, sir, things happen, and it doesn't stop us from continuing to do the things that we want to do. And whether you happen to be involved in a car accident, sir, car accidents don't necessarily stop people or drivers from continuing to drive. And in the same way that we have had to take a very strong effort to reform all that we are doing within the context of the management of the public finances, the reality is that the continued investment in this country by both individuals, businesses, financial institutions, sir, with respect to helping government to continue, sir, continue a very strong track record of delivering. And I heard the Honourable Member for St. Peter make that point very clearly. This government, sir, has been delivering on improving the public services to the country. Now, it requires, obviously, a level of finance beyond the revenue flow that comes, And it gives a measure of predictability, sir, with respect to us being able to execute things faster. And the truth is that we have had some extraordinary circumstances. And I know the news sometimes they like headlines and they like to sell papers as they know that that's their job. But the reality is, as we have been faced with challenges, as we start to, in a sense, ensure that the domestic capital market is revitalized in such a way that Barbadians can be indeed included in the recovery, sir. And I remember, sir, having some discussions with some persons within the financial sector about, I think it was early April, I believe. No, it was late March. And they were intimating that somehow the interest rates that are being offered need to be reviewed and the like. And I had to remind them very clearly, sir, very, very clearly, that when we came, I remember, and I made this point during the wrap-up of the estimates of the budget debate, that I remember a time in this country, sir, when Treasury bill rates was 0.5%. And by the time we came to office, the Treasury bill rate was 7.25. And therefore, what people remembered at the tail end of the Democratic Party administration was that short-term financing had gotten so expensive in this country. And the honourable member made it quite clear they were borrowing money, sir, to buy toilet paper. And that is not a statement that any of us in this country should be proud of, because if you are going to borrow money, what you do with it, sir, matters. Matters. And therefore, our record of delivery with COVID, with the ash, with the hurricane, sir, with the war, the polycrises, as they're termed internationally, sir, the disruption in logistics supply, sir, this government continues to deliver. And the honourable member St. Peter made that quite clear. I think we've all made it quite clear wherever we've gone that this government continues to deliver. And therefore, within the context of how we revitalize a domestic market, and I must say that in the near term, as the bonds remain protected, I don't want us to get into the notion that this thing will be the case forever. However, let me say this, sir. I can say with a measure of certainty, sir, as I stand here, that the trajectory that this country is on, persons will not have to be concerned about how the debt will be repaid, given the reforms and the policies that this government has implemented. When we're talking about Democratic Labour Party, but that's a different conversation completely, sir. And I know that at some point down the road, sir, and I hope that it is 50 years from now, if not longer, sir, that we will ever have to be concerned about such a thing. And I don't say that lightly, because for everything that you've been hearing in the public space, it tells me, sir, they have not learned anything in 5 years. They have not come to grips with the fact that things have changed since we've come to office. Things have changed. For the better, for sure, but things have changed internationally. And therefore, unless you have a commitment, sir, to understanding how are you going to unlock opportunities within this little rock called Barbados, as you know, sir, under the debt financial swap, we are trying to ensure that we understand what we're going to do with the marine resources, more than 400 times, sir, the size of the physical land space of Barbados, to help unlock growth and potential for young people or any Bajan, sir, to be able to participate. So this boss bond bill today, sir, is critically important because it presents an opportunity, as the member for St. James South indicated, for ordinary Barbadians to help finance the delivery of government's program. They will get a decent return as a result of that investment. And in the same way that we have to get back on it, when we were learning to ride, sir, growing up, and you fall off the bicycle, sir, the first time you fall off, the second time, sir, you think, no, I'm going to say this, sir, we don't ever want to restructure that again. We don't. in the same way that we don't want to experience the hurricane or another pandemic, sir, to trigger these clauses. I can't speak for the Democratic Party, sir, and what people may experience under a future, and I say these words with pinches of salt, sir, not just pinches of salt. But if that was to be conceived, I can't say to Barbadians that I have the same confidence in them as I have in this government for managing the public finances such that they can have the confidence, sir, that the continued delivery and improvement of the public services that we have given to the public for the last 5 years in extraordinary circumstances, not just globally, but in the context of what happened domestically, sir, the challenges that we face with respect to delivery of those services, given we were already deep in the midst of a pandemic, sir. The ash, the houses, and everything that resulted from that, sir, caused us to have to dig even deeper, sir, to ensure that we maintain that. And therefore, it is important that for the public to understand that when we make strategic decisions about who we want to govern this country, then you must understand the context within which you have a stable environment that ordinary Barbadians will not feel that burn against her, and that your government is making decisions that will redound to the benefit not just of you, the citizen, but to ensure then that your children and your grandchildren, sir, that you're laying a platform, sir, that you can pass a strong baton to. You really don't want, sir, your incoming runner to be huffing and puffing and barely making it, because as you know, sir, in life there are certain rules within which you have to operate. And therefore, if you have a relay got certain rules. You just pass over in a particular zone, sir, and your incoming runner should be delivering the baton to you strong. When we inherited this government, sir, that was not a strong baton. As a matter of fact, we had to take the baton. The people had to take the baton from them, sir, and they did it wisely. The people, sir, the people lick it out their hands, sir, literally, literally, because they really, sir, have run out of complete steam. They were rudderless, visionless, sir. And I think based on what we are hearing today, sir, that continues to be the case, and I hope, sir, that remains so for some time, so that we can just get on, sir, and focus with the business of executing and transforming this country. The reality is, though, sir, and every time we have these discussions, you have to remind persons in the public that, and I really like how the Honourable Member for St. Peter put it, because the truth is, sir, every time we come to the Parliament here, we lay documents, they're made public, the notification goes out, it says we sign these things, the terms and conditions are there, so the public is already aware. So if people want to go around making a fool of themselves, they're happy to do so, sir. But as a government, it is our duty to always remind people that when we had the budget debate, sir, in March, and we laid the estimates of revenue and expenditure in February, sir, ministries went through in this chamber, as you recall, sir, complete responses from members in terms of what the program they were outlaying. Documentation laid in this house, sir. I've laid the fiscal statement. We all kinds of reports in this place, sir, including the estimates of revenue expenditure for 2023. Now, I accept, sir, that we've put a lot of information in the public space. If the Democratic Party, sir, have a problem with reading, then I can understand, sir, how they've arrived at a policy where you would want people to pay to go to university. But the reality is that you got, at some point, sir, at some point, if you wish, sir, if you wish to take charge at any point, or the people want the people to consider giving an opportunity to take charge of this country, then you got to read. You got to read, sir. You can't get away from it. And therefore, if you don't understand how this thing works, then just ask a question. Just ask a question. But the information, sir, is made available publicly. We continue to make the information available. And I get, sir, that with having all 30 seats, that causes a little bit of pressure because with 2 elections going, sir, I know the pressure's on because people are looking for relevance. But the reality is, whilst that may be the case, our responsibility is to continue, sir, to give information to the public in whatever form that we may choose to give that information. I accept that there are some who are looking to sell papers and to make things as sensational as they possibly can, to make it seem as if somehow the government wake up yesterday, sir, and suddenly realize that this thing was happening. Because the truth is, sir, as we have been advocating for 3-4 years now, the reforms that we are on the cusp, I think, of achieving within the international space is not only just going to benefit Barbados, sir, it's going to benefit a whole host of developing countries. And if the Democratic Party don't understand that we are in this together as developing partners, if they don't understand that there's a certain responsibility, as I said, sir, when you're the Prime Minister of Barbados, there's a certain additional responsibility of the office, then I fear, sir, that should the people at some point in the future choose to go in that direction again, then I hope we don't end up in a worse place than we found when we came to office, sir, in May of 2018. But this government, sir, will continue to work. We will stay focused. I try not to get involved in too much talk and get on the radio, all this thing, because it's true, sir. My focus is to ensure that when we come and make any case, whether in Barbados or globally, that it is sound, sir, and I'm not getting distracted with people on the radio talking what they want to talk, because it is clear to me, sir, it's clear to me that it is a program that is intended to deceive Barbadians. That is what it is. And as the Honourable Member for St. Peter said, when you ain't got much to do when the day comes, sir, then you can either choose to do something productive, or based on the pressure that you're feeling because of the return of a colleague, that you may find yourself, sir, having to flare at all kinds of things, sir, with respect to what is happening within your intended constituency. But the reality is, sir, this is really about how the country is to be governed, to continue our development trajectory. We have some reforms to complete. We will continue to communicate with the people to be able to drive those reforms through, because the sooner we can get these reforms completed, it means that we can get all Barbadians engaged with respect to what their missions are in order to change the trajectory of Barbados. Building resilience, Mr. Speaker, means that the things that we have to relook, all the things that we were accustomed doing in the way that we were doing them, in order to make sure that we can improve them as quickly as possible, such that we can, as I said, not just build economic resilience, but physical resilience as well, financial resilience, such that the attainment, sir, of those sustainable goals in the shortest possible time, not just for Barbados, but certainly within the context of a stronger Caribbean space, is going to be critically important for the long-term trajectory of Barbados. That is why we are forging ahead with respect to specific arrangement with willing partners to ensure that Barbadians will have just the same amount of opportunity, sir, as anybody that may live in Europe or live in North America, sir, for investment, because once we have opportunities, once people have done some credible savings within the domestic space, it is really, I think, sometimes a lack of opportunity with respect to investment and getting a similar rate of return that has stymied growth, generally speaking, in the economy, and therefore we are committed to working to see how we can get those matters resolved, and this will form part of how that inclusion is to be done. So let me thank all of my members for their contribution. This bill, sir, as I said, is important for us re-engaging the domestic capital markets, and the confidence is there to return to the marketplace. I urge Barbadians, rather than get 0.01% in the bank, there's 4.5% available. You know that your government is going to put the money to good use, because you have seen over the last 5 years what your government has been able to do in extraordinary circumstances. And therefore, I ask Barbadians to put aside a little piece buy them in the strip, sir, through the central bank. Get the little berry, sir, in your bank account, rather than seeing your every quarter or whatever it is the fees being applied in relation to that for that. And whilst I know there's some reforms to be done within that space, the truth is that this is one element of opportunity. We're going to try to do a whole lot more, not just for government, but for mobilizing resources to help finance some other private sector activity within the private economy, to get the right instruments in place to be able to divert some of those savings into bankable and investable opportunities, so that we can help accelerate, sir, the recovery under the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan. And so, sir, with those very few words, I thank honourable members, and I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, we say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chair, I beg to move that you report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Question is that the bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Barbados Optional Savings Bonds Plus offered to the Public Amendment Act 2023.
The question is that the bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honourable member for St. James Central.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move the Honourable House be suspended until 3 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 3 p.m. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 3 p.m.